Graveyard shift workers of Reddit, what crazy, creepy, unbelievable things have you seen working in the dead of night? Part 2. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. I work a night job. Here right now, there are 12 security cameras that I look at occasionally that surround our sheriff's office, which has a jail that usually houses around 5 to 10 inmates. Small county. Usually around 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., I am pretty tired. I like to think that exhaustion is what causes the following. Camera 4 is for the SW corner of the office, with strange lighting. If I am not looking directly at it, between 3 to 5 a.m., sometimes what looks a figure of a man goes across the display. Always the same camera, usually around the same time. I like to think it's my imagination. Working overnight security, I noticed a woman standing in the middle of the parking lot staring at the security camera. When I went outside to tell her she had to leave, she said nothing and handed me a note. The note said something along the lines of, "They are listening to us. Don't say anything. If you or your commander can help me, just shake your head." Me being the only person there, I told her again she had to leave. Instead, she stood there for another 15 minutes staring into the camera. I called the police, but she was gone before they got there. Yeah, that was a freaky night. Not exactly what you're looking for, but a few years ago I worked for a private security company that had a literal graveyard as one of sites to inspect. In my state, you can't be in a graveyard after dusk. As I was driving around this particular graveyard, I saw a van parked on the side of one of the roads and think, score. I tell them to take a hike, fill out an incident report so it looks like I'm doing my job, and carry on. So I throw on the lights for a second, get out, check the van to make sure there's no people, bodies, shovels in there, but it's just a couple car seats, a stroller, baby bags. Then I look around a bit. I saw a lady lying face down on top of one of the graves with her head in her hands, 99% sure she was crying. It occurred to me at that exact moment that today was Veterans Day, Remembrance Day for you UK folks. The tombstone had a bunch of flowers and some flags adorning it. I said something like, "Ma'am, just so you know, it's illegal to be in a graveyard after dark," and left. Probably not the best way of handling it. Maybe should have gone all hard ass and asked for ID, made her leave, etc., or said sorry for your loss or some bullshit. But really, what do you do in a scenario like that? This woman, presumably, lost her husband to a war, got stuck with some kids, and is generally having a rough day. Oh, here I come to shit on her some more. Not crazy, creepy, or unbelievable, but very literal and figurative, graveyard shift, story. TLDR ruined someone's Veterans Day. This happened in the hotel lobby where I worked at and wasn't necessarily graveyard, but close enough. It was later in the evening and I was about to get off work. Suddenly, an ambulance showed up in the valet area and ran towards the elevators. Not knowing what was going on, I ran to the back where they received calls from the guests and was informed that an accident happened in room 9501. Thinking it was just another old person who was having chest pains, I walked back up to the front to start counting my bank to leave. As I'm there at my computer behind the desk, I see a man getting rolled out on the stretcher with a full-on raging boner poking up under the sheet that was covering him. Slight markings of blood were starting to develop all around his boner as he moaned in pain. A woman was following him out to the ambulance, crying inconsolably, half naked. I couldn't hear the conversation that was happening outside. I just know they wouldn't let her in on the ambulance ride to the hospital. Ambulance takes off, and half naked, crying woman continues back up to the room. Less than 5 minutes later, she comes back down still crying, saying she can't get back into the room as she left her key in the room during the whole ordeal. Our company has a policy that your name must be on the reservation in order to have access to the keys. Her name was not on the reservation, but I told her I would let her in if her last name matched. Unfortunately, she did not have any ID on her. I informed her I wouldn't be able to let her back in the room without verification of who she was. This is when she just went ape shit crazy, yelling that she was just his mistress and her name can't be on the reservation or else his wife would find out. She ended up running out of the hotel, and into the streets, still crying and half naked. I never found out what happened to her, or her dude, who dick apparently popped, while having sex with his mistress. I used to work security. There were 2 guys who got hired on at the same time that were buddies. They were also ex-Marines and batshit insane. Separate, they were manageable. But when working with them together, it was a bit rough. The worst was when they shifted the schedule so that on Sundays I'd be working my double shift with both of them at the same time and just myself. So there was 3 of us, and I was stuck with these lunatics for 16 fucking hours at least once a week. It turned what used to be my most peaceful and easy workday into a nightmare. The craziest day was one I'll always remember. The job site we did security on was a construction site for a power plant. So it was huge. I used to take a lot of long walks when working with the lunkheads because my sanity couldn't stand being anywhere near them most of the time. Well, one night in particular, I went to the other side of the plant and ended up being away from the main guard shack for nearly an hour. I start walking back to the shack, and I hear someone yelling my name from what sounds a mile away. I look up, and one of the Marines was up on this smokestack thing that was like 20 stories tall. It was starting to snow and he had his fucking shirt off. He was waving at me and whooping and hollering. Now here's the fucked up thing. There was no stairway or anything yet built to get that high up the stack. The only way to get up there was to climb a metal ladder on the inside of the stack all the way up. This crazy motherfucker climbed his ass up there on a goddamned metal ladder. At this point, I'm wondering where the other fuckhead is. As I get closer to the guard shack, I hear a bunch of noise. I open the door and walk in. The other psycho is blaring techno music and doing squats in the corner while sweating profusely. His shirt is also off. I calmly put my Discman headphones back on, walk out and close the door. I didn't end up going back to the guard shack for like 3 hours. By then, one of them was passed out and the other one was barely awake. Apparently they both decided to have beers, ecstasy and coke while on the job. Worked graveyards at a Holiday Inn. Graveyard. There is only one person on duty, so it's one person in charge of 85 rooms. It's like the Shining, long empty silent hallways, and I am the only person there. Well, anyways, it's about 2 a.m. slow night. There is a TV in the lobby across from the desk, so I am just there, resting my head on my hand elbow on the desk, the default bored out of my mind stance. When sudden there is a tap on my back right shoulder. I literally froze solid. I am the only person here, it's dead silent besides the TV, and for someone to be behind me requires them going through the laundry room and through the back office. I turn very slowly, scared as fuck. Usually if something scares me or anyone in general, it's usually fast turn, like a loud noise startling you. Nope, I was so terrified I turned slow as hell to see an old woman in her 80s and nothing but her bra and panties, and she is shaking with the saddest, deeply lost look on her face. I felt so bad for her it took over the fear and asked if she was okay and quickly grabbed her a blanket to cover herself. We walked behind the desk into the back office where I asked if everything was okay and what she was doing out. Turns out she had dementia and wandered out of her room, found the laundry room door, opened it, walked through there to the back office to behind me on the front desk. Worked overnight as a vet tech for almost a year a while back. We saw some crazy stuff. There was one time some people pulled up front in a truck and said they had a dog in the back that had been hit by a car. It was a boxer or boxer mix, 60 to 70 pounds, covered in blood, obvious compound fracture in the back leg. By the time we got out to the truck, about 30 seconds, it was agonal breathing. My coworker went to go get the stretcher, but I knew this dog didn't have the time to wait. I scooped it up and carried it into the back. Blood splattering everywhere. Got it into the back and we humanely euthanized it. I was covered in blood. Luckily I was wearing dark blue scrubs and it didn't look obviously like blood. Also remember a time a guy showed up at 3 a.m. with a Cairn Terrier that was choking on a rawhide. He didn't call and we had no warning he was coming. I was actually on my way out the door when the front bell rang. The other tech ran up front to get the dog, and when she rushed back with the dog we all dropped everything, placed an IV catheter in the dog and propofoled it down. The vet was able to pull the rawhide from its throat and we got it on some oxygen. It started and ended in about 3 minutes. My adrenaline was rushing so bad from that one once it was all over. I don't think I've ever had to move so fast before. I worked midnights at a medium-sized beach resort in Pensacola, Florida. A lady had jumped previously from one of the towers. No one wanted to patrol that tower. People would hear noises from the attic of the tower, so much so that the maintenance manager was asked to stay overnight in one of the condos to see if he could figure out what the noise was. The next morning he told my boss that he had no explanation for the noises that he was hearing and that in his opinion it was haunted. I had to make rounds by myself about every hour, and one evening the new guy brought in a night vision scope and we walked out and looked up at the side of the building, and someone was clearly visible through the night vision sitting in the chair on the balcony and looking at it. Normally no one was visible. Another time I was riding through the parking garage and we heard a shriek that sounded like it came from the tower itself. We all heard screams inside the tower and it always sounded like the same woman, but no one ever reported, and the guests we had were the type to report everything. I'd have to say my creepiest experience though was the night in the dead of winter when the place was abandoned and I had to deliver some blankets to a unit. When I went up, the sliding glass doors at the main entrance to the tower were stuck open. I spent about a minute trying to fix them and then I went on to deliver the blankets and radioed into log that the doors were not working. I delivered the blankets without incident, and on my way down I started to hear the most awful banging. I thought the big 6-cylinder diesel generator had fired up. Nope, the doors were slamming open and closed, and they were doing so with such force that the lock had been jarred into the lock position. Many people have died on the island through history. Pensacola was the first U.S. settlement. I've posted this elsewhere, but here's my story working the night shift at a hotel. I'm working the front desk third shift on Halloween night. Around 3 a.m. a beautiful 20-something brunette, scantily clad in a sexy devil outfit, enters the hotel with a white guy and a black guy, both around her same age, who immediately strike me as the douchey frat boy types. The white guy steps forward and pays by credit card for a room for the night as a walk-in. Around an hour later, the two guys leave through the front entrance chuckling. Around 30 minutes later, the girl comes out to the lobby looking confused. She asks me if I've seen the two guys she came with. At this point I can tell by her accent that she is likely East European. I tell her what I saw, and when she asks, I tell her I don't know if they're coming back. She goes out to the parking lot, then comes back in looking upset and asks if I have douchebag's number. I dial it for her and hand her the phone. No answer. She asks if she is stuck with the bill for the room, and I tell her no, that it's being billed to the card her friend used. The light bulb switches on over her head and she starts asking what she can get billed to the room. We don't provide room service or have third-party services charged to the room, but she finds out that the phone bill is billed to the card on file. She goes back to her room. I begin periodically checking the live electronic billing for the room's profile and see a number of foreign phone numbers she is dialing out to as the minutes climb. I begin making breakfast preparations for the airline staff that we will be serving soon. Around an hour or so later, as a few pilots are settling down for some breakfast, Sexy Devil comes out and asks if I can call douchebag again. I dial it and hand her the front desk phone. A girl answers and hangs up on her after she asks to speak with douchey. She calls again and gets the same treatment. After a few more times of this happening, the girl and her get into a verbal catfight until her friend takes the phone and answers. A few things she said stood out to me. Where are you? My purse is still in your car. Come back and bring me my purse. Who is that girl? Your fiancé? But you just had sex with me. I don't hash at $% in care. Bring me back my purse. You at hash $%. This sort of thing goes on for about 5 minutes with no real resolution. It doesn't sound like her friend will be coming back. She goes back to her room furious after the call ends, and I don't see her for the rest of my shift. The next night, I come back to work and the person I'm relieving asks me if I know anything about the guests who stayed in their room the previous night. I give her a brief synopsis and she escorts me back to their room. It is trashed. Every wall hanging is busted, wall-mounted lamps have been ripped out of the walls, legs have been broken off of the chairs, the whirlpool faucet has been broken off as well as the knobs. Just about everything that could be destroyed has been destroyed. My coworker tells me that the girl who stayed in the room invited her ex-boyfriend over to join her in trashing the room. The police were called, but the guests were already long gone and they simply took a report. About a week later, while I'm working a day shift, my manager tells me that the white guy called him up to talk about what happened. He asked if the hotel was going to press charges against him. The manager told him, "Not if you pay for all of the damage." The guy said okay and ended the call. That was the last I heard of the situation. TLDR, don't stick your dick in crazy, especially if you're an asshole. I work at a hospital overnight. One disturbed patient claimed to be Jesus. He clawed his eye out, popped it and ate it before he was restrained. Very disturbing. Many employees claim this hospital was haunted. I thought it was nonsense. A few things happened here, that's given me a belief there's more to people than a heartbeat. They close fourth floor occasionally. It used to be a baby ward. I was up there when I heard a baby crying. I called security. He heard it too. No baby anywhere. One night I was assigned to strip and wax a few rooms up there. While starting, a door slammed shut across the hall. I called out who was there. Nobody was. Looking in the room, no airflow, no windows opened. I calmly took my equipment and left. The next day my boss asked me why I didn't do my job. I said I don't get paid enough to deal with doors that slam by themselves. By far the creepiest. I was cleaning 2 rooms after patients left. They were connected. There was one exit. I cleaned the first room. Left for 10 minutes, got my supplies and went back to the other. I saw a little old lady in a chair, hunched over. I stared at her for a few seconds, thought it was odd they put a patient in already. 2 female nurses ask if I was sitting in the chair. They get scared. Nope, it was an old lady. Well, I check. Room is empty. She disappeared. I would have seen if she walked past me. Creepy. No one on the floor fit the description I gave of her, except the lady who died in the room 4 hours before my shift. I work in a very old hospital. I hear whispers, see shadows, and sometimes more. I am very skeptic, but seeing a ghost would be neat.